What is up, guys? I'm out here filming a real estate video with the drone, aerial real estate video of a 59-acre farm. And I just wanted to take you guys along behind the scenes, show you what my process looks like for shooting that. Got a couple hours of light left here. Got some light clouds, getting some nice diffused light. So yeah, we'll take you along, show you how that's going. So before you get to the location to shoot a real estate video, there's several things you'll need to make sure you do beforehand so that everything goes smoothly once you get there. And I just want to plug in here, the final edited real estate video is going to be at the end of this video, so stick around to the end if you want to see the results from this shoot. So the first thing you need to do when you're getting ready for a real estate shoot is to get the address of the property you're going to be shooting from the realtor or the owner, depending on who's hiring you. And then once you have that, you'll want to plug that address into AirMap or another app like that to check the airspace, make sure there aren't any airspace restrictions where you'll be shooting so that you can actually fly and film. And if there are any restrictions, you can check in the app if you can get authorization to fly there and what the flight ceiling is. And then the second thing you'll want to do is to check the weather for where you'll be shooting and schedule a time with good conditions for flying and filming. I like to use Weather Underground for this because they have these nice little graphs that let you see how the cloud cover and other conditions change throughout the day. Now, you obviously don't want it to be raining or super windy when you're filming, but it's also important to keep in mind the lighting conditions. I cover this more in other tutorials in the course, but I generally prefer sun or very light clouds for real estate videos. If it's completely overcast, the light will tend to be very flat and lack depth and contrast, so I try to avoid completely overcast days if possible. With scheduling constraints of when the client needs to have it done and things like that, it's not always possible to get the perfect conditions. For this shoot, the client needed it as soon as possible, and so I fit it in even though there were more clouds than I would have really liked. And speaking of lighting, I like to schedule shoots in the first 3 or 4 hours after sunrise and the last 3 or 4 hours before sunset, because that avoids the harshest midday sun and tends to give you better lighting overall. Now, if you live in an area with a lot of hills and mountains like here in West Virginia, you'll also need to pay attention to when the sun goes behind the hills, because that can be a couple hours earlier than when the sun sets. If you're in contact with the owner, you can just ask them how late the sun is still on the house, or if you can't ask them, you can just look up the property on Google Maps or Google Earth and put it into 3D views so you can see where the hills are versus where the sun will be rising and setting. And in general, it's a good idea to pull up the property on Google Maps anyway to get a little bit of an idea of the area that you'll be shooting in. And one more thing I always do before the shoot is to ask the owner or realtor what specific features of the property they want to have highlighted in the video so I can keep those in mind while I'm shooting and make sure that I get enough shots of those things. For example, for this video, the owner told me that what they wanted me to highlight was 3 building sites that were on the property and an old coal mine. And then finally, before I leave for a shoot, I make sure to have all my gear ready to go. Make sure the drone batteries are charged, the drone controller is charged, the batteries and controller for the backup drone are charged, the phone and tablet batteries are charged if you aren't using a smart controller. Make sure I have several empty micro SD cards. Make sure my camera and gimbal's batteries are charged if I'm using them, and make sure I have NDs and spare props for both drones packed. Now, that can be a lot to remember, so I put together a drone shoot checklist that you can use to make sure that you aren't forgetting anything. And that checklist is available inside my full drone filmmaking course. So enough of the pre-shoot prep, let's get back to the on-location footage of shooting this real estate video. So what I'm using to shoot this is I have an Air 2S here, and on there I have a Polar Pro 2 to 5 stop ND to get the shutter speed down. And so we'll be taking it up and flying around, getting some shots, and I'll sort of show you what I'm looking for, trying to get in the process of that. So we'll go ahead and get the drone up and start filming. So as far as settings, I was shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second most of the time. For some shots, I did switch over into 4K at 60 frames per second because on the Air 2S, 4K 60 has a pretty significant crop, and I like to use that to narrow my field of view and get more depth compression and parallax. Now, the Air 2S does have the option to shoot in 5.4K, but my computer can't really edit that footage smoothly, and I'll be delivering the real estate video to the client in full HD anyway, so I'm just going to stick to 4K for this shoot. And I'm also using the 10-bit D-Log color profile, so I have maximum flexibility to work with the colors in post. For real estate videos, you aren't going to be doing really heavy color grading, but I still like to shoot in log because it lets me maximize the dynamic range that the drone can capture and recover the detail in the highlights and shadows. And also, my whole color grading workflow is based on log, so it's easier for me to just use that than to use the in-camera color profile. And as far as exposure settings, my ISO is between 100 and 400, and I tried to keep keep the shutter speed around 1/60th of a second, but as the lighting changed, I ended up bumping it on up to around 1/160th of a second to keep from overexposing the shots. For white balance, because it was cloudy most of the time, I had it set to 6500 Kelvin, using the manual Kelvin white balance as I usually do. And I used the standard gimbal and EXP settings that I teach in the lesson on movement inside the course. So to start with here, I'm just getting a shot of the house, just doing a nice parallax move around it. You want to keep an eye on the drone and your controller, not crashing into anything. Usually the house is going to be the first thing that you want to get a shot of, because that's usually a centerpiece of the property. So now we're getting some wider shots. Usually we want to get some closer shots and some wider shots, because the closer shots intercut nicely with the wider shots, and you can both show detail of what you're filming, and you can also get the whole wide sweeping landscape, which is one of the main reasons that you use drones for this. Here I'm getting a shot where I'm trying to get a bunch of things in the shot at once. That way you can sort of see the scale and how they all relate to each other, because if you just get shots of each thing individually, it can be very confusing to people where all the different things are in relation to each other. So here I'm getting a shot that's one that I really like to do, where you're flying forward and to the side and rotating the other way to kind of create a parallax move as you move in on your subject, and also tilting the gimbal down to keep the whole thing in the frame. Creates a really dynamic 5-axis move that works really nice for sort of showing off property from the top, but not just straight from the top, also adding some dynamic motion into that. So then you also just want to get some straight top-down drone shots. Those are sort of a standard drone shot. You usually want to get at least a couple of those, and I usually throw one of those into the shot. But if you have too many top-down drone shots, it just sort of starts to become monotonous and boring, all the same kind of thing. Usually try to get a couple movements, flying forward or backwards, and then one where I'm ascending or descending and rotating the drone a little bit along with that. Create some more nice dynamic movements. And it's nice if you can get really nice long smooth shots, because that way you can speed them up or speed ramp them in post. Gives you a lot more flexibility when you're editing, so that you can speed things up and get those more dynamic shots. So now we're getting some shots down here from closer to the ground. You don't want to get all your shots way up in the sky, because otherwise it'll look like you're just way up in a helicopter in an airplane and you can't really see it. You can get close to the ground with your drone, so you should. Again, get more variety in your shots, and it also makes the viewer feel like they're really immersed in it. They're actually there, not just flying over it in a jet. Okay, where is that drone? In theory, it will avoid the tree, but good point, yeah, avoid the tree and hit the branches. Battery's dead. Yeah, I've still got 20% battery. I usually don't land until a little bit less than it says I should, because I like to squeeze out as much flight time out of each battery as I can. One thing that I always like to do is I like to make sure that I get shots from multiple angles, multiple different shots of everything. You make sure that you have enough shots to really cover the subject matter and create an interesting video without it just being too short, just like one shot of each thing. Okay, so I think I'm going to, before I head down there and get some close shots from down there where I can see the drone line of sight, I'm just gonna get a couple more shots right up here close to the ground. Like over here, there's some trees and bushes and a fence line. I'm just gonna fly real low over that, create a nice reveal shot of the rest of the property, just sort of for some variation, different types of shots to make it more cinematic and just have a nice variety of shots that are in the video. Okay, so we're just gonna get this all lined up here. I'm actually gonna darken my exposure a little bit so I'm not clipping the clouds in the sky. And then we're just gonna fly right here over this fence. We're gonna fly sort of between these trees. It'll give some nice depth and motion by doing that. See how it turns out. Nice. So I'm just going to tilt the gimbal down a little bit here so that the horizon is right on a thirds line. And I'm just going to fly exactly the same path back so that I get the same shot in reverse, kind of a backwards reveal. And I can reverse either one of those if I want to in post. So that way I basically have two versions of the same shot. Okay, now we're just going to get one more shot of this, going a little bit slower. So we're going to move over and do this again. Sometimes you just got to do this to get the shot that you want. Just do a couple iterations of the shot until it looks just the way you want it to. And that looks pretty good. So I just flew sort of sideways and did a parallax shot right past a bunch of these trees here in the foreground. and that just sort of creates some nice quick motion with the slower motion in the background and just really sell the effect of being in the scene. So I'm going to go ahead and land the drone, and we're going to go down closer to the house and get some shots there. Okay, so now we're down here at the house. We're gonna try to get some close shots. I usually like to get some shots flying right around the house. Anything that's around the house that you wanna show off, even like fly right over it, even right through it, or just sort of do some parallax around it to get those nice close-in shots of the main subject. So here I'm just flying in cine mode right through this tree here, or right next to it, trying to get really close and fly slowly, create a really nice, smooth shot here without crashing into anything. There we go. So now we've got some wires here that we've got to watch out for. Something you always got to watch out for, especially when you're filming houses. You got to watch those wires, because if you don't, you're bound to run into them. And even if you do watch them, they're easy to run into. So always keep an eye on the wires and make sure you stay away from them. Now, unfortunately, the battery on my mic died and I didn't realize it, so I lost the audio from the rest of the shoot, which is really unfortunate because I did some really fun stuff like flying the drone into the entrance of an abandoned coal mine, but I was mostly just getting more close-up shots of the house and other details of the property. There are a couple important things that I do want to mention though. First of all, this property was by no means perfect. Not everything was in the greatest condition. There were piles of building materials and even a couple of abandoned cars distributed around the property. Chances are a lot of properties you're going to shoot are going to have some things on them that don't look so great. It's great shooting $1 million showcase properties, but the bulk of the market isn't that, so it's your job to show off the parts that look the best in the real estate video and not show the parts that don't look as good. You can do this by framing your shots to exclude things that won't look great. Using a cropped in mode like 4K 60 can help with that. You can choose angles that show the best side of things, and you can also hide ugly messes behind buildings or trees. Another important thing to keep in mind when you're shooting is getting plenty of shots of everything so you have multiple options when you're editing. You'll get a better result by picking the best clips out of too much footage rather than having to use every single clip you shot just to make a long enough video. Now there are a couple more specific shots that I like to get for real estate videos. First of all, there's the pull back and up shot where you fly up and backwards away from the house, and then the opposite of that, the push in, where I'll start far away from the house and relatively high and then fly towards the house and drop altitude to keep it in the center of the frame. I always make sure to get a couple of these shots because many times I'll use a push in for the beginning of the video to introduce the area and then zoom into the house, and then use a pull out at the end of the video to release tension and give a satisfied feel. And again, you'll want to keep your movements smooth and consistent throughout these shots so that you can speed them up or speed ramp them in post. Another tip for push-ins and pull-outs is that as long as there isn't anything moving in the shot, you can reverse a pull-out in post to create a push-in or vice versa. So if you shoot 2 push-ins and 2 pull-outs, you'll have 4 options for both the beginning and the end of the video when you're editing. Another shot I like to do for real estate videos is to fly the drone close to the ground and tilt the gimbal up so that you're looking at the house from a lower perspective, and this just really makes the house look bigger and more impressive. Another thing I always make sure to do is to get detail shots. Even if I'm shooting a primarily drone video, I'll always bring my camera and gimbal to grab a couple super close-up detail shots on the property. It might be some old flowers or an old wagon wheel or some horses or a fountain, and then I'll just intercut a couple of these shots in with the drone footage. This does a couple of things. First of all, just throwing in 1 or 2 detail shots makes the video feel a lot more high-end and cinematic than if it was just all drone footage. And second, it helps to not only sell the hard-cold information about the property, the house is so many square feet, it's so many acres, the grass is green, but it also helps to sell the ambience and the feel of the property. And being able to create that emotion and atmosphere in your videos is one of the main things that will set your videos apart from all the hundreds of other drone pilots out there. And you can do this with drone shots too. For example, in this video, I have shots of a tree-lined road and a view from the top of one of the hills, which aren't necessarily essential parts of the property. They're just kind of incidental, nice-looking things, but they help to give that atmosphere and emotion of what the property is like. And editing and color grading the footage to be as attractive as possible also plays a big role in this. Like I mentioned, I'll show you the final video I edited at the end so you can see how I applied all of these things. And speaking of editing and color grading, I have full videos breaking down down the editing and color grading of this real estate video inside my full drone filmmaking course, Flying Filmmaker, along with dozens of other tutorials that teach you everything you need to know to shoot, edit, and color grade professional cinematic drone videos that will make you stand out from all the hundreds of other drone pilots out there. Anyone can fly a drone, but very few have the skills like editing and color grading to actually create truly professional level cinematic drone videos. And you can get 30% off the full course right now by using the link in the description of this video. Or if you aren't ready to join Flying Filmmaker, I also have a completely free, value-packed 45-minute drone filmmaking training, and the link to that is in the description as well. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future drone filmmaking content. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and we'll roll the final real estate video.